Welcome to welcome to Yale, because Jake can, show you Yale in the background there. We've got the Croon Hall. You can see people walking through it right there. So imagine you're kind of walking up these stairs, very warm, like, panel building, like wood from the Yale forest that's integrated into the building, got a nice solar array on top. You're walking up into Burke Auditorium to sit down for a joint degree admission session. Or, like Lauren, you're at the Yale School of Management, getting ready to go into one of the classrooms, kind of, big circular amphitheater, rising up, lots of people with name tags. You're excited to be there. There's potentially some free food around that you're scrounging as you walk in. Jake has probably got some pizza behind him or something else like that. So we're in the moment. We may be virtual, but we can make this live and have presence while we're here. I'm Stuart DeCue, the Executive Director of the Yale Center for Business and the Environment, which is a joint program of the Yale School of Management and the Yale School of the Environment. I'll be your host for today, but I'll just be giving a brief overview and intro, and most of the time will be spent talking about the experiences, pathways, questions, opportunities that the three panelists here are asking and working through, and the kind of things they're doing in the joint program. I'm also a joint degree alum from 2011, so I can also provide kind of historical perspective on the joint degree, but the live activity and the most interesting stuff will come from the three folks here. And we've got lovely human beings who are here to help us. So Lauren is a first year in the joint degree program. Jake is a second year. And Grace is on the final lap in the third year of the joint degree program. Yes, sad face, because this place is lovely. But we know you're going to do wonderful things in the world, so we're excited to see what happens there. But let's get started. So for all you online, thanks for joining us. And please feel free to drop any questions in the chat as they come through in the Q&A. We'll get to those at the end. We're going to do about sort of 30 minutes or maybe a little over of facilitated Q&A, and then dive into the questions that you have. Hopefully we'll be able to address some of them as we go through the Q&A at the first part. Other kind of housekeeping elements or things to note, we'll also be dropping into the chat links to admissions elements, when the requirements are. If you have any questions on those, the websites that'll be there, or any other information. Okay, so let's dive right in. I'm just gonna actually, can you enable me to share screen? I just want to share a little bit of a couple of slides to kind of give people context on the joint degree program. So one of the things, there's a number of great things about. Oh, right. Well, PowerPoint decided to die. So I can talk it through. So the joint degree program comes out of a kind of long history at Yale of people establishing programs on impact in business and society and in natural resource conservation, development, and the environment, right? So the Yale School of the Environment, previously the Yale School of Forestry and Environmental Studies, was the first institution of its type in the United States, established right around the turn of the century in 1900 to be able to figure out how do you preserve natural resources for future generations. The Yale School of Management was set up as kind of one of the last major business schools established, and with a different purpose, a different intent, leaders for business and society. And that DNA being established in the kind of late 70s drew a bunch of people to campus, some who were already here at the School of the Environment, and others who were drawn to the Yale School of Management and that different mission. And they helped create and foster the first of its kind joint degree program, where they went on between these two places, which are very close in proximity. Actually, the doors, you have kind of a 3 to 5 minute walk between these places. And these early students knocked on doors, asked administrators and faculty questions about we should be able to connect these two because there's a real overlap between the focal areas that are there. So they were really the academic entrepreneurs that established the program, the students themselves. And now you've seen other programs like this established at a range of other universities. But I think that still lives in kind of the type of students that are attracted here, and the activity and the way that we help support people kind of pursue new programming activities and ideas in and around Yale. Then subsequently, the Yale School of Management established an MBA program with a focus on sustainability. That's an executive MBA, people with 15 plus years of experience. So building on the history of the joint degree program, integrating that executive focus with a focus on sustainability. And then we have actually launched now a range of online programs for working professionals. So if you're 45 and you have 2 kids and you don't have the ability to come back to campus for the entire period of time, what does it mean to do 5 hours a week in a program where we hopefully can give you something that you could use the next day in your work? And that's our Financing and Deploying Clean Energy program, which has welcomed 500 plus participants in just the past 5 years. So, but really all of this stems from this core program of folks who are trying to figure out the ways to meld 2 disciplines, translate different languages, and essentially build a different type of economy, social systems, and the way that we value things. And how are they pursuing that, approaching that in their work here at Yale? So this is what we're going to explore and look at about how do you do that in an academic or educational program. And so I'd love to start with a kind of the folks here introducing themselves, like where are they coming from? You know, kind of what were you doing before? Sort of what are you doing right now? Like give us a picture of what's happening on campus and like what your day-to-day looks like. And like give us the fuzzy, murky, potentially very concrete things that you want to do with it going forward, right? So what does that look like? And let's start, Lauren, you just have jumped in on campus, right? You're new here. Hopefully we're giving you lots of things that you're chewing on, engaging with, playing around with, but like, where are you coming from? What's going on right now? What are the kind of things coming at you and how are you putting them together?
Yeah, absolutely. So hi, everyone. Nice to meet you all. My name is Lauren D'Souza. I'm a first-year joint degree. I am starting at the School of Management. So if you apply to both of the schools and get into them at the same time, you get to choose which school you start at. And for me, I really wanted to start at SOM. I'll explain a little bit about my goals, where I'm coming from geographically. I am a West Coast girl. I was born and raised in Phoenix, Arizona, and spent the last 9-ish years in the Los Angeles area. So coming to Yale is a bit of a change of scenery for me. But my interest is really in agriculture, specifically in scaling regenerative agriculture and building more sustainable food systems and food supply chains. I was working at an investment firm, a private equity and asset management firm in Los Angeles before I came to Yale. We invested a lot in agricultural projects, conservation, water infrastructure, and renewable energy. And my goal with getting my MBA and MEM was to broaden my knowledge on the other side of the value chain. So instead of looking at farms and how we can make farms more sustainable, what's the role of buyers and the power of big agricultural corporates and consumer packaged goods companies in sourcing and really pushing down a top-down approach and market-based incentives for farmers, growers, investors to increase the supply of regenerative ag products and regenerative farms that are out there. So that is, I've been really immersed in the business school curriculum so far in my time at SOM. SOM has a really interesting and unique core curriculum where you focus on the perspectives of different stakeholders like customer, investor, competitor, where you learn all of these business school typical topics like operations, accounting, finance, all of that through the lens of different stakeholders. So that's been really interesting and different for me. I don't come from a quantitative background. I was a policy person in college. So it's really fulfilling my goals of what I wanted to get out of an MBA so far. I'm also involved in a lot of different things at SOM. I'm a first-year leader of the Food, Agribusiness, and Beverage Club, the Business and Environment Club, and the Women in Management Club. And I have a job at CBAY working on the certificate that Stu mentioned, the Financing and Deploying Clean Energy certificate. So lots of different things to do on campus. And I've been trying to get as immersed in SOM as possible this year.
Great. And lovely to have you in New Haven, which is an incredible city. I'm very biased because I've lived here for 15 years, but I think it's fantastic. Even for folks from the West Coast, we've got sun, we've got lovely leaves, we've got plenty of great food, and there are all sorts of things we can drop in the chat about the stuff happening in New Haven too, like new climate tech incubators and all other things that you can participate in. All right, so Jake, you're in your second year. You've been through SOM. You're now at YSE in the first year curriculum. Like, give us a sense, like, how did you get here? And who else did you bring with you? And what does else your life look like? Like, can you tell us, like, what is the picture of your life here in New Haven and at Yale? And then what are you playing around with internships and other activities as you move through the program?
Sure. So I, like Lauren, am also a West Coast kid. Grew up in Denver, spent a lot of time in California, Arizona, lots of different places on the West Coast. This is my first time being out on the East Coast, and really my first time seeing all the leaves change colors. So I have actually really appreciated that. I also started at SOM like Lauren. That's pretty much where the similarities end, though. I kind of come with a strong quantitative background. I studied econ, math, physics, and logic. Uh, During my undergrad, I went into economic consulting. Was there for a while and realized it wasn't exactly the place I wanted to be. Econ consulting, I ended up just kind of supporting some clients that I didn't love, and was thinking a little bit more about what would bring like meaning and fulfillment. So kind of wanted to go back to my roots, which really is cars. Grew up working on old cars and wanted to go into sustainable automotive, which is kind of how I came to the joint degree programs and how I'm here at Yale right now, specifically focused in sustainable transportation and automotive. Came here with a wife and a kid, had another one along the way. So proud girl dad, two little girls. The youngest one's just starting to stand up, so they're kind of like playing together on like an equal playing field, which is a real adjustment for the 2-year-old right now. So I'm not as involved in extracurriculars as Lauren, but having a great time. So here at YC, some of the things I've participated in that I've been really lucky to do. One of the things through a class last year, I was able to work with Rivian, automotive startup out of California. Do some really cool stuff with them over the semester, and then was lucky enough that even though they canceled their internship programs, they offered to keep me on over the summer. So there are a lot of cool opportunities to interact with like businesses and companies that you really like while at Yale in a way that is very low cost for the employer and a way to show that you have the skills even if you don't have the background. So for me, it's a big kind of career change, but something that I was able to be kicked off through engagement and things here at Yale.
Great. Thanks, Jake. All right. So we've got different picture here, different sector, different like social situation, lots of different type of people in the joint degree. And your Grace, like, so you're in your third year, you've had the opportunity to experiment with 2 internships. Like, where do you're coming from? What have you played around with? And like now, how's the picture coming into focus on where you want to go next? And if you could, on the sort of side of, you came in with an idea, okay, here's why I want to do the joint degree. How has that kind of matched or been connected to the experience you've had? And how has that been different, like similar than any expectations you had coming in?
Yeah, totally. Sorry for my voice. I had COVID 2 weeks ago, so you'll have to excuse any voice breaks. But I was in energy consulting before this, originally from the East Coast, so was in the Southeast before this for college and work. Wasn't quite moving the needle on climate change the way I wanted to, so wanted to be in a higher impact area from the work I was doing. I thought that might be finance, so thought I needed the MBA element of that. I had zero finance background. But then also really wanted to understand where I could move the needle on actual climate change. So wanted a better understanding of climate science and things like that. So that's where the MEM really came in for me. And I think that I've been able to pretty equally balance the 2 degrees across the past few years. It's been an amazing opportunity to be able to explore both areas. So my first summer was much more business school focused. I did ESG for a private equity firm, working on decarbonizing their portfolio companies, a lot of carbon benchmarking. So very traditional, very corporate, high-rise New York. Then my second summer, I was able to work for an investment advisory firm doing natural capital investing. So ended up in rural Kenya, rural Mozambique, looking at natural capital projects, completely other end of the spectrum, very ecology based, very community based, and have sort of wanted to merge those 2 things as I look at jobs going forward. and just wouldn't have had the opportunity to do such different summers, such different parts of the environmental and economic and finance spectrum without the joint degree. So it's been really neat to be able to think about how I can merge those two sides as I go forward. As far as things I've been involved in on campus, I have been pretty all over the place. I've done things from forest research with a really incredible professor named Brad Gentry, was in an impact investing competition my first year looking at climate tech. And now I'm trying to focus more on the job search. I'm also a den parent for the joint degree community. So myself and one other third year are in charge of social stuff and building community for the joint degrees. So if anybody has any questions about socially and sort of emotional support from the joint degree, happy to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, cool. Can we actually start there? So and talking about the communities, and maybe, Grace, maybe you could start talking about the den. And then, Jake, could you talk a little bit about kind of the YSE community, and Lauren, like the SOM community? What does it mean to be a part of all three of these as a joint degree? And how do you kind of navigate being in and out of those? So Grace, like, what does the den look like, and how do the joint degrees themselves support each other as they navigate and go through Yale?
Yeah, definitely. So the den that Stu is talking about is the joint degree community. So at any given time, there are 20 to 30 of us across the 3 years. We try to get together about every other week just to be, a social and emotional support. We're in kind of a unique position on campus because we're here for 3 years. So nobody else in either of our two programs are here for 3 years. So the joint degree really does end up being your longest term community, your longest term relationships while you're here. And we also occupy kind of a unique space in that we do, obviously, by the nature of wanting to be in this degree program, we care about the balance of some of the more practical business side of things, but then we also deeply care about the environmental side of things and wanting to do climate mitigation or environmental justice or improving food systems or, whatever your environmental niche is. We care about both of those things really deeply. And I think it can feel a little bit alienating, honestly, to be in both schools. Sort of at SOM, you tend to get labeled as like a crunchy person or, a person who is very focused on the environment. While you're at YSE, you'll sometimes get a little bit ribbed for being more invested in the business side of things and having more of a pragmatic, like, okay, well, what do we really need to do to create systems change sort of mindset? And the joint degree, at least for me, has been this incredible support system of people who are in the exact same mentality, people who are choosing to do both programs because they see a lot of value in both and are very comfortable occupying the middle ground of that space. I was talking to a joint degree who's a second year at SOM right now, literally last night, and she was sort of asking if I had felt like I was pegged as an environmental person at SOM. I was like, yes, completely. Every joint degree is, and we can all talk about it. And that is the beauty of the support system of the joint degree. So I really loved it. I've found a lot of really good community support. It's also a pretty incredible network beyond Yale because the joint degree has certain traditions that we can talk more about if people are interested. There's a really good long-term community bonding aspect to it. Where I can meet joint degrees who graduated 10 years ago and we have stuff in common. We have things to talk about. They can ask about updates on certain joint degree things. So it's been a really incredible support system at Yale, but then also a really neat alumni network to be able to tap into and to have a lot in common with just right off the bat.
Yeah, it's a great point, Grace, and a really interesting one to see sort of like, the head of Amazon's climate pledge or the head of California's independent system operator or people who sort of invented the field of conservation finance or chief sustainability officers or people who've like been instrumental in starting the green bank movement or, are leading low to middle income solar developers. Like, I mean, you just have all sorts of joint degrees in there. The mayor of New Haven, these are all joint degrees that have come through over time. So that alumni community has really been one that's powerful. And it's honestly, there's some interesting elements and dynamics that honestly we haven't had to face before. Of like, we just hosted a clean energy conference that almost 800 people registered for, and over 500 attended on Thursday and Friday. So like being the environmentalist or the clean energy advocate is becoming the mainstream. And so like, what do we sort of say to people now to how to keep pushing them in the direction of what's a better North Star and what's a bigger systems change that we can advocate for? So Jake, give us a sense of like going from SOM to YSE, different communities, elements that are here. Like, what does that look like? What does it mean to be a part of two networks?
For sure. It's really fun. Like I said, do not have a background in sustainability or anything like that. So this is like a very new place for me. Coming from the business school, which obviously, even though it has its society focus, is very like kind of capitalist centric. Then coming over here to YSE, where I mean, capitalism's a dirty word. You ask anyone like what the major problem in the world is, and they'll say capitalism. So it's very fun to have like both sides of the issues. And just a plus one for Grace, what she was saying, having that joint degree community that does see kind of both sides of the issues in the middle ground is it's a cool group of people, and the people that I love a lot. But so yeah, being here at YC, very different, very eye-opening. It gives you a really different perspective if it's not something that you come from. I can't say too much about like the social side of it because again, I don't get out much. But it's, I mean, based around going to the trees, right? People here really do love that, and so it's fun to get that side.
Yep, cool.
I have a quick plug for how Jake did use the YSE SOM sort of combined network last year. Jake was at SOM last year, but the class he mentioned that he got his Rivian internship through was at YSE. He knew that I was TAing it. He reached out. He said, "This is my dream. I have to be in this class because I know that Rivian is one of the clients. How can I make that happen?" And I think the joint degree, because you're so plugged into both schools, you know about more opportunities like that. And so you're able to be more involved with both schools in a more like holistic way from the very beginning.
Yeah, you really do have that pulse on both things. And if you're interested in, I mean, if you are interested in the intersection, then there's not really like a way you could do it by just doing one degree and then trying to be in the other school. Both having that extra year, like that third year, to really do both things, because there are so many things to be involved in. That's one thing that I'm constantly amazed about here at YSE is all the different things I could be doing that I wish I had time for. And so even though I'm like not at my third year yet, and who knows what I'm going to do throughout the rest of this year, I'm already super grateful to have that extra time, especially just seeing how, again, you know, you're kind of entrenched when you go that first year, you're at the business school, you see all the things that are going on, you go through the core, you meet all of your friends, and like you really have that social foundation, and you can kind of scrap it all and go over to the next school and try to make like this whole new group of friends while keeping your old ones. And it's a lot. So it's nice to have that third year.
Cool. Yeah, and we appreciate you TAing classes at the School of Management while you're at the School of the Environment. And you know, Lauren appreciates it too, I imagine. But Lauren,
Jake is the TA for every single core class at SOM, so we appreciate it.
There was a meme made about me, so I felt pretty cool.
Yeah, which is also something you see pretty consistently amongst joint degrees, is like they're more represented in the teaching fellow ranks on a consistent basis because of the relationships they've built and the way that they've invested in the kind of classes and learning too. So Lauren, you're in the first year, you're around all the students at the School of Management. One of the questions that comes up in the chat and always is like, for people who are interested in the MBA, they're like, can I get the same thing out of this by taking electives over at the School of the Environment? Will that work? How does that work for me? You probably are getting questions from your classmates and others who are in that. Like, what do you say to people who have that? And like, what's the network feel like at SOM that you're joining amongst all those people who are interested in and engaged on issues of business and the environment and sustainability?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I when I was thinking about grad school, did not really want to apply for an MBA because I had a very stereotypically negative view of what a business school was like, of the type of people who went and the type of vibes that exist at business school. And SOM is not really like that. As everyone has mentioned, SOM has a very strong like business and society focus, and the and society part is, you know, trying to get more people to have impact driven careers. And there I've loved the people I've met at SOM. I think pretty much everyone at least is very values aligned with me and other joint degrees in some fundamental way. If not, like I've met a lot of people who want to pursue impact related careers in some way. And I do get a ton of people asking like, oh, how do you, what's the joint degree like? Should I apply? I have a lot of friends who are interested in applying, and a lot of people who do plan to take a lot of classes at YSE and try to replicate that experience. But I think, as Jake touched on, like, it's really not the same. You are an SOM student taking classes at YSE. I would say that I know a lot of SOM students who do that and just don't really feel like they belong at YSE. You just get a very different vibe when you are really a part of that community. You have a strong reason for applying and wanting to spend that extra year here, make the additional investment to spend more time at YSE. And I am sure, see the same thing with YSE students who take classes at SOM. It's just a completely different experience where you're so immersed. You really get that extra time to enjoy Yale and enjoy New Haven and take advantage of truly all of the things that are out there for people interested in the intersection of business and environment, which there's an endless amount of events, resources, and things to do on campus related to that. And yeah, it's just that investment in your own experience, I think, really brings a different vibe to your time here. I'm so grateful to have the third year in my future, because even looking ahead at the next 2 years that my MBA peers are going to experience, like, the time is going by so quickly. I really am so grateful to have another extra year to do more. And I'm so grateful for the joint degree community. Grace and Colin, our other den parent, have done such an amazing job at connecting us, and it's just the loveliest bunch of people in the world who are so values aligned and so supportive and know exactly the experience you're going through, and are just a great bunch of humans to talk to and enjoy a glass of wine with.
That's great. And so can you all project out a little bit to like 10 years down the road? Like, everybody's coming to graduate school for a transition, right? Like, people are moving into something else or doing something. And, you mentioned, some of you have talked about like the people that you've met 10 years from now who are joint degrees, who are doing something with it. Like, what do you sort of see in how they've utilized it, or what they're doing with the joint degree, or what does that feel like to kind of employ both skill sets that, feels like a fit for you post MBA, MEM? Like, how does that picture come into focus for each of you? And Grace, maybe we could start with you, just because you're closest to that finish line. Like, what does that feel like? And are there people or archetypes that you see out there in the joint degree community that you look at and you go, yes, that's a great archetype or model to follow or path?
Yeah, definitely. It's very close for me. Some might say alarmingly so. I think that the sort of joint degree archetype that I've found to be the most relatable or the most exciting 10 years down the line there's sort of a group of joint degrees who were at the intersection of climate and finance. This happens in a bunch of different ways. It happens in energy, it happens in natural capital, but all at that intersection of climate and finance, who have been market leaders and market builders over the past 10 years. So, I mean, Stu, you were referencing the green bank movement. There's heavy joint degree involvement in that. I spent a lot of time 2 summers ago talking to a couple of joint degree alums who were really involved in some of the SPAC movement in the energy world and getting early stage financing into energy technologies that are more nascent and hard to finance. And I think I feel really excited about that in the carbon space. So this past summer, all the projects we were looking at were carbon based, and I got really excited about the idea of being able to revalue how society sees nature and how we interact with the natural spaces around us, and actually incorporate some of that value into our economic systems, into our financial systems, into our investment strategies. But it's a really new market. It's really high risk. And the work that's done over the next 10 years, especially as we approach 2030 goals, will mostly be first of its kind deals, will be very innovative, very cutting edge. And so I think I feel really excited about going into that space and sort of following in the paths of other joint degrees who have also been in cutting edge spaces, who are taking a little bit more financial risk in order to really try to create systemic change in the climate space.
Great. Lauren, can I turn to you on that too? I'm just dropping also in a career pathways guide in food and agriculture that CBA put out a number of years ago. And you'll see joint degrees actually featured in that guide if you want to look at it, like Mike Sesko or Dom Grant or other people like that, who are those 10, 15-year out alumni who are experimenting and really playing at the edges. But Lauren, there's a lot of interest in regenerative agriculture, changing food systems. Like, where do you see putting this together and then, nudging the world in a healthier direction?
Absolutely. I mean, I don't have a ton to add beyond what Grace said because she just captured it so well of like both the leadership and innovation that joint degrees go on to embody in their careers. It's like not just working at the status quo of what's been going on, but recognizing the depth and complexity of our environmental and social challenges and the types of, innovative market-based solutions that we need to test out and scale and partner with other organizations to achieve. One joint degree I interacted a lot with in my previous job was Charlotte Kaiser, who's the managing director of NatureVest, TNC, the Nature Conservancy's impact investing arm, and she is like embodying this sort of innovation. We were a private equity firm that had the first ever partnership with the Nature Conservancy at the fund level. So she was really leading the charge on how do we get TNC embedded in that fund governance. They had a seat on our investment committee, which is pretty wild. They had to approve every single deal, and they were a really important stakeholder for us. So, and we, achieved a lot of impact that was more than TNC could achieve working by itself or my previous firm could achieve working by itself, which was the whole thesis of our partnership and working together. So it's stories like that that really inspired me to join the joint degree community. And in looking at the alumni directory, especially of people working in agriculture and food, it's like those are the careers that I could see myself having in 10, 15, 20 years down the line. And clearly this degree has set people up on a path to make that change and, take on those leadership roles that really require a deep understanding of not only the environmental issues that you're trying to solve and the most effective pathways of solving those, but also being able to speak the language of business and being able to, interact with operations directors, CEOs, chief investment officers, all of these people who have different priorities and make the business case for, sustainability and investing in climate and regenerative solutions.
Cool. Great. And, there's also, I know there's a nice link dropped in about the joint degree alumni community where you could find those on the CBAE website. You'll also, if you sign up for our weekly newsletter on the Yale Center for Business Environment, people have asked about resources. You'll see the kind of daily the weekly activity of events, the reports, the kinds of things students are interested in or engaged on. And you'll also see profiles of alumni mentors that we have, which we have a slate of kind of 11 to 12 each year that people can just drop in and spend time with. A number of those are joint degrees. Megan McGrath, Donovan Irvin that are in that program right now, and you can see their profiles. Jake, anything to add on this one or double click on?
Yeah, I think just one thing that we haven't really touched on is, I mean, even if you mentioned that everyone's kind of coming here to pivot, right? Whether mostly if you're going to an MBA, everyone's kind of coming to pivot. And a lot of people do kind of want that sustainability emphasis and try to take a lot of classes at YSE. But one thing that kind of impresses me when you look at the people who do that joint degree is no matter where you go, for instance, like if you're going to, you just decide to go to McKinsey afterward and kind of do a typical consulting thing, you get that niche carved out for you, right? Like these employers recognize the fact that you do have something valuable that is different, right? Like we all know that employers do look at, what you studied. They look at certificates. That's why you're, coming and getting a master's degree. There's one, to learn something, two, because it means something. And so they look at that, right? They say, oh, you have an MBA, but you also have this MEM, like you were serious about it. You learned something, like you have value in this space. And so they carve out space for you that maybe they wouldn't carve out for someone else, even if you have the same job title. So for me, that's pretty obvious as I go through interviews talking with, car companies, right? Like Ford and Lucid and places like that are typical strategy roles. But as they talk to me, they say hey, we know you're also doing this MEM, we'd like to do something a little bit different with you if, we go through and do this internship. So it opens up a lot of doors, even in places where you wouldn't think there was a door, just because you do have that dual degree.
Yeah, great. And I think, one thing, you all sound very coherent and engaged and kind of somewhat expert in the industries and sectors that you have. And yet we're also talking about everybody's coming in here for a pivot or an area, right? People coming in are how, walk them through the application process. How clear are you in your vision for what you want to do here? But then what does it mean to open yourself up to new opportunities or experiences while you're on campus and kind of give yourself the chance to explore more than one thing in depth? Like, is that possible? Is that doable within the time? Like, to any of you, like, how do you think about that, like, application process of telling a coherent story and kind of doing that, and the opportunity to explore within you're on campus?
Go ahead, Grace.
I can start this one. I'm the furthest away from it, so I can be quick. I do think it is really helpful to be very specific in your application, just from an admissions perspective about what you want to do. A lot of people change that once they get here, but I think it helps the admissions team if they have a really clear understanding of your narrative for why you're coming to school. They know that you're here to make an impact on campus. It's a short program, it's not like undergrad where you go in and you have a lot of time to play around. Even having 3 years, it's still a short amount of time, but people who have 2 years, you really have to hit the ground running. So I think it's helpful to come in with at least some framing of what you want to do, just so when you land on campus in August, you have things to sign up for, you have things that you're excited about and engaged in. I think for almost everybody, that changes over the course of being here. Like my first semester, what I was mostly focused on was PEVC climate tech. And from there, I was able to keep diving into the things that I was more and more interested in. And now I've landed more on the carbon nature-based solution side of thing. But I came to that from having a really specific agenda coming into school and having a very strong plan and things that I was interested in exploring. So I think leave room to expand and leave room to go in new directions. But I think it is really, really helpful to come in with at least some idea of extracurriculars you're interested in, jobs you're interested in applying to, alumni you're interested in reaching out to.
Cool.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, I think a lot of people, especially on the MBA side, will come in and completely change what their interest and target area is going to be. I've heard the SM admissions office talk about how they should actually start collecting data on what people wrote about in their applications and what their outcome was after they graduated, which would be interesting to see. I did have a very specific focus, but the vast majority of my classmates did not, and are even changing their path from what they wrote about. But I think, every MBA application, especially focusing on the MBA, because that has the very typical interview process and, the longer application, all of that. They really want to hear that story of why are you getting an MBA and why are you getting it now? So that's like the number one thing you have to have down, is just being able to tell your own personal narrative of where are you coming from and what do you want to do with this. That really shows like how have you thought this through, and what value is this going to add to your life. And the joint degree admissions process is totally separate. Like it's interesting to them if you're applying to both schools, but that's not something that they're looking at specifically in your application. So it's important to also consider what YSE is looking for. I think they really value a specific theory of change and how you want to, make an impact with the MEM, but it's two kind of different beasts that you have to prepare for in different ways.
Yeah, and that demonstrated the YSE side. It's like that demonstrated commitment to how you're going to be a leader on the environment in particular. And also, and this is important to note, like the references is not all professional. Like people at the School of the Environment, like they're like deep, geeky researchers with like incredible depth of knowledge who work very closely with students, and like they want academic references there as well. The School of Management is way more interested in your professional references and professional experience. And the School of the Environment would like to see more on the academic side as you go through the admissions process. Great. Jake, anything to add on that one?
Yeah, just about how you kind of expand it as you go, right? So like I came in knowing I wanted to do automotive. My SOM essay was about how I wanted to be the CEO of Ford, which, would still be very cool. I might not pivot from that. Maybe one day Lauren, the CDO, will collect that data and I will have gone and be CEO of Ford. But I'd say, like I said, I didn't have this background in sustainability. So like coming here and going through the YSE core, where it's a lot about kind of human science, you have a lot of things about environmental justice and things like that I've never really thought about, I'd say has really expanded it. Where when I was coming in, I was saying, okay, like we're doing this EV transition thing, but that's clearly not enough. Like you need to think about all the different, like other different sectors where you need to like decarbonize automotive like along the way. It really came in one thinking about that, right? Kind of thinking about the circularity and the industrial ecology. Whereas like these classes I'm taking have really opened my eyes to the problems with cars on the environmental side, or like on the justice side, right? The environmental justice on like the human side. So I'd say it's really expanded my scope. And so like while it's still the same thing, right? Like I'd still like to go and be CEO of Ford. Kind of my method of change and the things I think about are vastly different because of this degree.
Yeah, and I think, can we build on that a little bit? Like Cecilia asked a good question just on like on the how present is the indigenous voice in the core curriculum at YSC and the industries and sectors you're exploring. If you could expand that out from the kind of indigenous voice to just the different perspectives that are there, and kind of where do you see like that being represented and understood and talked through in a way to expand your thinking while you're here. Jake, you were just touching on that, but Lauren, are you seeing that in the SOM curriculum? Grace, how have you seen that between both schools? Like, what does that look like to experience and be involved in on campus?
Yeah, here at YC, it feels like even in classes, right? Like obviously the students, there's a lot of kind of individual movement to talk about, like the indigenous perspective and things like that. But it's really surprised me how much it's integrated into like every one of the classes that I've taken so far at YSC. From like, physical science to human science, kind of across the spectrum. People have really talked about, okay, like what has been the effects of kind of Western colonization very much on like our thought process, right? Like on our systems of knowledge, on how we learn things, and what can we learn from like other systems of knowledge, other thought processes and epistemologies. So it's been really, that's another thing I think that's been really eye-opening, is just kind of thinking about the effects of that Western knowledge and that capitalism on like how we currently see the automotive sector, like why people rely on it and why we built it the way we have. And I'd say adding in like that additional like indigenous epistemology and thinking on it from that perspective has been super useful and really eye-opening. And I wouldn't say, like obviously sometimes you could think it's a little bit of lip service, where it's kind of like the new thing that we need to do if we're going to be like this environmental justice kind of school. But I'd say most of the time it is not lip service, and it's actually very helpful.
Cool. Great. Yeah. And just in terms of like, connections on that, right now, actually, the Yale Center for Business Environment and the Yale Center for Environmental Justice are building a certificate for working professionals that integrates energy justice with clean energy development, working with students on campus to be able to develop and deliver that. And there's an incredible faculty member, Gerald Torres, who kind of represents and focuses on a range of issues on environmental justice and teaches on that, and is just a powerful and lovely human being. Also, if you're interested and you want to learn more about this on your own and reading, highly recommend the book Braiding Sweetgrass, which is an incredible piece of like literature, as well as a book called The Dawn of Everything. Like really cool stuff out there that's sort of, I think, changing the way people think and engage. So Spencer had a good question too, of like, so right now we're in the like start of the largest industrial transformation since the New Deal in the United States. $250 billion being deployed in the past year just on clean energy, right? Like things are exploding. Like, what does it mean do you feel like you are detached from the experience of this transformation right now? Like, what does it mean to spend 3 years in school, not in the workforce at this period of time? Like, how do you think about that? Are you getting different things here at Yale in this space than you think you would out in the workforce? And where does that put you going forward? I mean, Grace, you're just about to start because you're just about to get out there. And then maybe like Lauren and Jake, like, what does it mean to like, do you feel like what are the projects that keep you engaged?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's such an interesting question. I came into school at a time when this stuff was just starting to really blow up. It was post COVID, it was post George Floyd, things, ESG conversations were starting to happen more and more. The BlackRock letters were the top headlines in financial news. So I think that for me, it has honestly felt the opposite. And I would be really curious to hear what Lauren and Jake feel, but I have never felt more tapped into what's happening in the environmental space than right now, because partially with the joint degree, you're getting new waves of people coming in every year. So you have new waves of professionals who are starting every year from a really interesting perspective. And then you have people leaving every year who are entering the professional space. So on both ends, you have probably more exposure to people wrapping up work and then starting new jobs and being exposed to a lot of industry trends than you ever do in your day-to-day life when you're just kind of working with a similar set of people as you all go through your career progression. So I think I've felt very, very tapped into it. Some of the YSE research side of things has also really helped with that. Like professors are really trying to stay on top of the latest research that's being done. A lot of YSE has been very practitioner focused, which has been a pleasant surprise. And I think more and more professors are starting to think about how their research can be used for management and for practitioners. And, those people are trying to get published. They're trying to do relevant research. And so they are on top of current industry trends and what is really important for environmental management challenges right now. Plus, you're around people who are thinking about the same things as you are constantly. So my social conversations are about the environment, about the intersection of business and the environment. It kind of organically happens that you spend a lot of time very consumed in this world in the way that you don't necessarily when you're executing a 9 to 6 job.
Yeah.
So yeah, I it's an interesting question. I had never thought about it as being a sacrifice of being out of the workforce. It almost feels like I'm more tapped in than I ever have been. But curious if that's not a universal experience.
Well, just to tap onto that, like Grace's co-den parent is a Colin Custer, and like he did a project with another joint degree, Alex Healy, on regenerative agriculture and assessing it. They did this research over like a year and a half, and we're about to publish it. Alex is working in the field professionally now, and you connect with him, and he's like, well, all the stuff that I did while I was there is the stuff that I'm doing right now or thinking about. My thinking was really updated and like beyond what maybe the industry even was while I was at Yale. And so then we'll put out a report with his name on it from Yale, and his probably employers will be like, huh? Like, wait, what's going on here? Why is this being published and sent around through our circles? So yeah, anything to add on that? Like Lauren and Jake, you mentioned Rivian, Jake, as being something that was kind of like unique and new there. Things that you're doing here that feel potentially like you couldn't do them if you were out in the working world, or what does that tension of not being engaged in industry right now look like?
Well, I'll just quickly add, since you mentioned Alex Healy, Alex interned at the company that I used to work for, and I can definitely say that we so appreciated the insights that he brought to us because he was bringing stuff that was way more up to date and innovative and like front line, I guess, than what we knew in our like older way of thinking. So it was very much appreciated. We wouldn't have gotten that perspective without him. And I was also in a similar position where I loved my job before coming here, and I could have stayed there and probably continued to work and done fine. But I really saw this as like making an investment in myself. And in order to get where I want to go in the future, I need the skills that I'm going to be getting from this program. And so, yes, there's like this huge trend of increasing massive investments in renewable energy and nature-based solutions and natural climate solutions. But I think that trend is only going to continue to increase. And so there's no perfect time to leave the workforce. There's no perfect time to go to grad school. But, I'm going to be going back into the workforce where these investments are continuing and the trend is only getting bigger. And I'm going to be going back into the workforce with way more skills than I, came to Yale with. So that was why I decided to take the time now.
Actually, the perfect time is when you have 2 children under 2, right, Jake? So like that's the ideal time to pursue a joint program.
Definitely. I'm totally getting everything out of this that I want to. 100%. I'd say it's a couple things. One is sometimes I do feel a little bit frustrated being here at school instead of being out in the workforce. I think that happens like when you're in undergrad, sometimes you'll take a class that you're like, this has absolutely nothing to do with what I want to do, but like I have nothing going on anyway. And so you just kind of do the homework and like there's not really an opportunity cost. And so every once in a while you'll be here. Maybe it's like a core class at SOM that like you already know all this stuff, but you weren't able to test out of, or maybe same thing here at YSE. And you'll kind of sit there and be like, why am I doing this homework right now? Like there are things that I could be learning if I wasn't here. So there is that opportunity cost. And sometimes like I do feel that frustration. But that being said, the breadth of what you can learn while you're here, like just taking the opportunity to learn something new. Like for instance, I'm working with a couple guys right now who are working on like a green hydrogen startup. So working with them, learning all about like green hydrogen and that transformation and thinking about how it might apply to the automotive industry one day down the road. Is something that I'd never be able to do if I was actually like in industry right now. So taking the opportunity to have like the broad view and learn a ton of different things that might pertain to your system that you'd never be able to think about while you were actually there working in it, is actually a really cool experience and one that I don't know if you could get another way.
Cool. I think we have time for just like a couple more questions or like last question here. First, would one of you describe what your MF colleagues, the friendly foresters, are doing? Like, there are people who are taking a forestry degree in the joint degree, doing the MBA and the MF. Can anybody kind of put yourselves into their forest and their boots while they're in the forest? And like, what are they, how does that fit or work?
Yeah, I can take that. I feel like I've been pretty tapped into the ecology forestry side of things. I've had a few moments this year where I'm like, oh gosh, should I be an MF? So the MF is a much more prescriptive ecology based degree program. You are coming out with a forestry certification. And so the program has to meet those forestry certification specifications. So it's a little bit more regimented, a little bit less flexible. But if you are looking for a way to very quickly get buttoned up on what's happening in ecology, it doesn't necessarily just have to be tree or northeastern forestry specific. It can be much broader than that because a lot of the classes are focused on more general ecosystems and landscapes. But you do take slightly more science and forestry management focused classes over the course of your 2 years. With an optional, there's a forestry crew summer that a lot of people opt into, where Yale has a managed forest, which is an awesome resource. But people will actually go up and do forest management for an entire summer to get real hands-on forestry experience. So I mean, incredibly, incredibly valuable degree, especially if you are interested in carbon or nature-based solutions, things like that. Like a lot of the people that I'm looking at working with in the future are coming from a forestry background because they have a really strong understanding of forest dynamics, how trees are growing, how to best manage to optimize for a series of variables, one of which can be carbon. So yeah, it's an awesome degree program.
Cool. Great. All right. So team, like final kind of thought or question, like just time travel back to sitting on the other side of a webinar and like, you're thinking about different graduate degree programs, you're kind of considering your paths, you've got this sort of, like dollar figures you're going to have to invest, time you're going to have to invest in this as you go forward. Like, why do this? Like, what's the, like, give us your sense of like, why jump in and do this? Like, what would you say to someone who's in the position of all the participants who are online right now? Like, what about the joint degree? What about this experience? Like, what do you leave them with as the reason to sort of jump in, pursue this, consider it as a path? And let's start kind of going like third year to first year. Lauren, we'll give you the last word. Grace, we'll start with you and go to Jake and then head to Lauren.
Yeah, definitely. I think that my world has just been expanded in ways that I didn't even know it could be expanded in. The things that I'm thinking about were climate solutions that I didn't know existed 3 years ago. I think I had this internal desire and was looking for something that was very community based, high levels of impact, sort of repaired humanity's relationship with nature, which seems like a wild thing to say, but that is what I was looking for. And I didn't even know how to begin looking for that. And being exposed to the ideas and the job possibilities across this degree program has just completely opened my eyes to what speaks to me in the environmental movement and what I feel excited about going forward. So, I mean, yeah, it's been a really transformational 3 years.
Cool. Jake.
Yeah, the opportunities are crazy. Like while you're here at Yale, the amount of things that you can get involved in, both at YSE and SOM and kind of everywhere in between, are insane. Like there are so many cool things that you could learn and be a part of. but I'd say the external opportunities are also pretty wild. Like people that, I was just trying to pivot like before coming to grad school. I was thinking maybe I don't need grad school, maybe I could do this on my own. People that wouldn't give me the time of day. Now I send in a resume and they email like 2 minutes later asking for an interview. So like it really does provide one, a lot of knowledge, I think, a lot of opportunities to learn things that you wouldn't otherwise. And two, has a strong signal that you are someone that is willing to dedicate the time to learn something and to be great at something. And people really respect that. So like, if you're out there thinking maybe I don't need to do a master's degree, maybe I don't need to do the dual degree and it's just enough to like get one and then say I'm kind of interested in the other. People respect the time, people respect the effort, and it opens up like a ton of doors.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, there's more money out there in the world than there is expertise, right? The thing that we lack is kind of the detailed knowledge and the ways people can intervene in systems and have the biggest impact with the least amount of effort by understanding where it can change. And we are awash in cash and we are lacking expertise on where things could go. I'm giving like a soapbox sort of opinion here, which I will validate with science later on. But Lauren, so give us your last word on like why, for the folks on the other side of the screens, this could make sense.
Yeah, I mean, as the person who was closest to the application process, like I literally was in your shoes this time last year. I always knew that the joint degree was like a pipe dream for me because many of my mentors and friends and professors did this program or did either SOM or YSC. And so that was the goal. And I only applied to programs with the MEM MBA joint degree. So I knew that that was what I wanted to do, but I would just really recommend talking. I mean, you're hearing us talk, but like, especially if one of our backgrounds resonated with you, or if there's another joint degree who you see on the CBA website who is doing something similar to what you could see yourself doing, like that was the best way that I really found people that inspired me to choose Yale, like Alex Healy. I talked to Grace over the summer when I was choosing whether or not I wanted to come to Yale. And it's just the enthusiasm and brilliance and expertise and warmth of the people here. Like it should convince you that this is the best place to be. So, and the community that you find here is just incredible. So I am totally happy with my decision and don't regret it for 1 second.
Cool. Well, that is lovely to hear. And if you have other questions, as Lauren mentioned, you can reach out to any of us. You can find my information on the Yale Center for Business and Environment website. You can reach out to me and connect. I would really encourage people to sign up for the weekly newsletters that are in and around here. You can do that as somebody who's not on campus and just get a sense of what the day, week, and the life of people looks like through some of that, to give your, to transport onto campus. And happy to provide you with any more information. As you see in the links, there's information on the MBA program and the admissions. The admissions deadline for the Yale School of the Environment is in December 8th. So a few weeks left if you're still getting your application ready there to apply on the YSE side. And we just really appreciate you all taking the time to think about this, explore it. But most importantly, I'd like to thank, Lauren, Jake, and Grace for, spending time with us today, thinking about this, sharing their experiences. You're lovely humans. Thank you for doing this and for being a part of the community here. We are here. And if you have questions, it's a big investment. It's a lot of time. Ask those. Find your fit. Like find a place that it feels where your head and your gut are connected with the people that are there. And you are going to be able to take those 3 years and then do something meaningful with it 10 years from now. Because we need every single one of the people on the line to be doing that. Like, come join here. Like, use this trampoline to launch yourself to be the CEO of Ford and reshape what transportation and infrastructure looks like in the United States and other places. Like, go, go, go. We got to have you. So thanks for being here. And we look forward to connecting as you go forward. Have a lovely Wednesday, everybody.